this letter. What was the number of letter? 69. Good. You already won half of the competition. And last night we read the paragraph of letter 69 that 3 times the word ihda means be careful and be aware, show understanding. It is very serious, it is very dangerous. Tonight we continue with another paragraph. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ أَرْضَكَ غَرَضًا للنضال القوم ولا تحدث بكل ما سمعت ولا ترد على الناس كل ما حدثوك به فكفى بذلك جهلا. One of the good tafsir and interpretation of Nahj al-Balagha is by Dr. Muhammad Ansari. He is in Mashhad, Imam al-Balagha al-Salam. He doesn't cover the entire Nahj al-Balagha, but he explains so many of the letters, the sermons, and the words of wisdom of Imam Ali. And about this paragraph, he had this explanation that there are things that are not, we don't have to be so serious and so much waswasi about them. But then there are things that are extremely serious in our faith. For example, he said, أَسَالَةُ الطَّهَارَةِ وَأَسَالَةُ الْحِلِّيَّةِ. You know, sometimes you know that this is water, okay? It's a drinking water, pure water, and you drink. You know it's good, right? It's a good water. And you have some water over there, so it's no discrimination if you are welcome to the water as well. So I know this is water, I don't have any doubt about that. It's very clear and, it's good to drink. So this is halal, this is tayyib, no problem. But sometimes you know for sure that this water is not healthy, it's contaminated, it is dirty, somebody put some poison in it, whatever, you are sure that's not good. So obviously you avoid drinking that water too, right? If you know for sure it's okay, so it's okay. If you know for sure it is not okay, then it's not okay. But what about the time that you are not sure? You see this water here and you have some suspicion, you have some doubt. Is this water clean or is it tahir or it's najis? In this case you say asalatul haliyya means that originally it should be okay. Since you have doubt, you don't say no, it should be najis. Just because I don't know, it should be. Since you have doubt, in the situation of doubt, you say it's okay. And you do it. Well, if you want to be like a muhtat and something and doing some ihtiyat, that is different, no problem. I mean, you are like so much serious about your health and you want to make sure that the water that you drink is healthy. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But that's a technical matter. It's not a religious thing. I mean, religiously, if you are 100% sure that it's tahir, you are sure. If you are 100% this is najis, so it's najis. But if you are confused whether this water is tahir or najis, you would say asalatu tahara. It is tahir, right? Salatu tahara. This is religiously. But technically, You can have the ihtiyat, no problem. If you want to be extra, uh, careful about what you eat and what you drink, that's other issues. But we are talking about something is ma'lum al-tahara, something is ma'lum al-najasa. So you know that. It's ma'lum, it's known. Yeah. Yeah. But what about something non-nadri? I don't know. If you don't know, then you say inshallah is fine. Right? And inshallah it is halal. So asalatul hilliya, asalatul tahara is applied in a case that you are in doubt. As I said, but if you want to do ihtiyat, that is a technical matter. That's not a religious issue. Now, but there are certain things that you cannot take it like inshallah is this, inshallah is that. You have to be very careful. For example, when it comes to your integrity and integrity of other people, when it comes to the property of people, and when it comes to the life of an individual, you cannot take it easily because you are dealing with the life of someone, you are dealing with dignity of an individual, and you are dealing with property of a person. So in this situation, you have to be very, very careful. So in this case, Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying that in his letter to Al-Hamdani, Al-Harith Al-Hamdani, Imam is saying that be very careful. Number one, la tada. So in this paragraph, there are three don'ts. Don't, don't, don't. The first don't is لا تجعل عرضك غرضا للنبال القوم. Harith, make sure that you don't put your ard. What is ard? Integrity, right? Ard, a'rad means your dignity. لا تجعل عرضك. Don't put your dignity غرضا للنبال القوم. غرض means target. نبال القوم, nabal means like an arrow, an attack. Don't let your integrity be under the attack or attacks of people's expression. That is, don't put yourself in a situation that your dignity is in danger for no reason. Only sometimes you sacrifice your dignity, your air, your property, your life, everything that you have. You sacrifice that for the sake of truth, for the sake of justice, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of salvation of your society, for the sake of God. That is sacrifice. That is different category. We are not talking about that. We are talking about for no reason you put yourself in a position of accusation. You act like a way that you encourage people to say bad stuff about you. Don't do that. And there is no reason that you compromise your dignity for silly things that society may say about you. So that is order number one in this letter, which is very important. Integrity, life, property. These are very fundamental things in our religion. These are maqasid al-sharia. That means that the entire Islamic law is there to protect people's life, people's property, people's integrity, people's faith and intellect. Intellect, integrity, life, property. These are 5 issues, very fundamental. Maqasid al-sharia means the sharia The faith is there to protect these fundamental rights of people. And integrity is one of the very fundamental. Not only your integrity, but integrity of other people. Like, for example, the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا. غيبة. The verse says that أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه. You like to eat the dead flesh of the flesh of your dead brother. First of all, the verse is like everybody is your brother. You know, as a humanity, it doesn't mean that your siblings are family. Your brother is biological. No, your brother means in a general sense, everybody is your brother. Everybody is your sister. When you backbite someone, you are eating the flesh of your dead brother. That means the act of backbiting is an act of assassination. You are killing someone. And then you are eating a dead body. Because by doing that, you kill the integrity of someone, which is even worse than physical death. Al-fitnatu ashaddu min al-qatl. Sometimes making fitna against personality of someone is even worse because you kill that person. Sometimes you see the case of suicide because somebody feels that is so depressed, so embarrassed, so ashamed, and cannot survive because his integrity is gone or her integrity is gone. So that is number one, that you cannot attack the integrity. And the backbiting is some أن تقول في أخيك أمرا قد ستره الله. There is something that people don't know about this individual, and now you know it, and you mention it. By mentioning that, you are killing the character of a person about his private and personal life. That is an act of assassination that the Quran says you cannot do it about yourself and others. And this is why al-qadhf is haram. If somebody said, I know this lady committed an adultery, or this man committed adultery, by saying that there is a punishment called al-qadhf, that means 80 in the Islamic court, they punish this person with 80 lashes. Then why you said that? Why you accuse someone of adultery? You have to come and prove it. If you can't prove it, you are going to be punished. Because integrity of individual is important. Of course, if somebody doesn't care about his own integrity and their own integrity, that is a different issue. Somebody officially says nothing is haram. He says adultery is okay, and this okay, and that okay, and everything is okay. So for this person, modesty doesn't matter anymore, right? This person, right, think that everything is okay. من ألقى جلباب الحياة فلا غيبة له. I'm going to conclude very soon because I see Brother Jalal is here. So I'm not going to talk after him. So now it just happened to, we shifted the order. So when someone ألقى جلباب الحياة, when somebody already, doesn't care about, nothing is shameful for this person. He doesn't care. And doesn't feel shy about anything. So that person, sometimes they are very proud to be known as sinners. Like they think that they, just because they break the law, they are very courageous. So they think this is very, very good things. 5 minutes, I try to make it even less than that. No, it's, if it is true and you say it, is backwarding. If it is not true and you say it, is worse than backwarding. That is accusation. that is even worse. So if it is true, but no one knows it, because as I said, sometimes there is an individual in community, everybody knows the side of life of this individual. He doesn't care. Gambling, drinking, adultery, all of these things. They are so proud now. And there are so many people, they are so proud to be gay. And now in this country, right? I mean, there was a time that in this country, in last century, like to be gay, you could be punished to death even in this country and in Europe. There was punishment of death for those who committed for some homosexuality. Till like a few years ago, they said, don't ask, don't tell, right? Don't tell, don't ask. But then the Supreme Court changed the situation. Now there are so many people that really say it, and they are very proud of that. In this case, if you say that that person is gay, he doesn't mind. He is very proud of that. This is not riba. This is not backbiting. But backbiting in a sense that satarahullah, something that is mastur, no one knows about this individual. And if this individual knows that you said that, that hurts him, that hurts her, that is legal. That, if you say it and if he knows about it, if he hears or she hears about that, then, that dislikes it. That is legal. So in this case, if he doesn't care, فلا يلوم غيره. He cannot complain about it because he himself doesn't care. So Imam Ali is saying that the order number one is that don't put yourself, why you put yourself in a situation that people do backbiting about you, right? Save yourself from backbiting in a way that you act in protecting and defending your own dignity and dignity of other people. So don't be proud that you are the target of arrows of people's accusation or conversation. That's number one, that you have to save yourself from this situation. Number two, Imam said, وَلَا تُحَدِّثِ النَّاسَ بِكُلِّ مَا سَمِعْتَ بِهِ فَكَفَى بِذَلِكَ كَذِبًا. The second don't is that don't share everything that you hear from people about somebody else. Oh, I heard about this guy and I heard that and I heard that. Yes, because you heard something doesn't mean that it's true. Maybe what you heard is a lie. It's not true. So why would you share something that you are not even 100% sure? Even if you are 100% sure, you shouldn't all the time say it. وَلَا تَقُلْ مَا لَا تَعْلَمْ. If you don't know it, don't say it. وَإِنْ قَلَّ مَا تَعْلَمْ. And you know that usually you don't know too much. And then another saying is that even don't say everything that you know. So the second thing that Imam telling Khalid al-Hamdani don't do is that لا تحدث الناس. Don't talk with people بكل ما سمعت به, everything that you heard. فكفى بذلك كذبا. Maybe what you heard from people, that is a lie. So what we get some conclusion from this second saying of Imam Ali is that be careful about talking. قل الطعام وقل المنام وقل الكلام. This is something that is encouraged in our culture, that to reduce. Don't talk too much, don't eat too much, don't sleep too much, right? These are three things that culturally قلة الطعام, قلة الكلام, وقلة المنام. 7 hours is like the minimum. I don't practice it myself, but I would tell you that 7 hours sleeping is good. That's normal. All the doctors say, but doesn't have to be like they say. In month of Ramadan, and no tasbih, when you even sleeping You are doing, after ibadah. That doesn't mean like you sleep the whole time in month of Ramadan. Ramadan is not to make us lazy, to make us not to work, to make us irresponsible. Ramadan, as a matter of fact, is a month of action, a month of responsibility. So, inshallah, we'll continue this discussion for tomorrow night. But the first one was that be careful about your integrity, and the second, not to share everything that you hear about everybody that might be a lie. And final thing that I explained tomorrow night, لا ترد على الناس كل ما حدثوك به فكفى بذلك جهلا. And when you hear something, don't just keep denying everything. There are some people that are like, they don't accept anything, they don't agree with anything. They deny everything. They don't believe in God, they don't believe in Day of Judgment, they don't believe in hell, they don't believe in heaven, they don't believe in anything. Well, when you get to this point that you think that you know everything, and based on that you deny everything, in reality you don't know too much. So when someone denies everything, like a general category, everything is denied by this person, that is ignorance too. So sometimes you share everything, that might be a lie. Sometimes you deny everything, that might be ignorance. I mean, the maximum you may say, I don't know, or you may say maybe. But you cannot just deny, because how do you know? وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Our knowledge is very limited. So I'm sorry if I made a little bit longer. Tonight is one guest lecture. That's why that I think, just to keep this environment, and the Daqat min al-Iman, that business is part of our faith, and especially when it comes to the masjid. If you see in masjid there is a dirt somewhere or an area is not clean, everybody is responsible to clean it up when it comes to the masjid. I mean, in our house should do the same thing, but especially in masjid, the welcome. You cannot say, oh, masjid has a janitor and there are boys and girls that are cleaning the masjid. That's their duty. Islamically, if we know any area in the masjid is dirty, that is responsibility of everyone. And when somebody went voluntarily and cleaned that area, then يسقط عن الآخرين. But till then, everybody is responsible. And I think it's important to not drink tea and coffee and just control ourselves for like half an hour, 1 hour of tea and coffee. And I know sometimes it's hard after 17 hours of fasting, but inshallah Mahjureen. And when we go to the Mahdi Hall, we have all chance to actually help ourselves. So inshallah we continue. Tonight is Brother Jalal is unfortunately his last night of listening to Brother Jalal, but he is part of our masjid and part of our community. We have Brother Hassan and Brother Abu Dhar who are going to join us in coming nights. We continue this Nahjul Balagha. We are going to have a great celebration on middle of Ramadan, the birthday of Imam Mushara. That is by Mainstay Foundation and Islam Culturalism Cooperation between us. It's going to be a huge celebration here, inshallah. I think it's Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. It's coming Friday night. So you participate. We are going to have another beautiful iftar on Saturday night. We keep asking everyone to reserve your place for the iftar, and then we don't hear, so many response. But then when we start the iftar, you see people are coming. Where's my table? Where's my table? What table? You never call. You never confirm. So please confirm and make sure that you join the iftar. And we like to share the iftar with everyone. When you are leaving at the door, you may just put your name, and you don't have to pay for it, but at least you reserve your seat. So let us welcome the Jalal Muhyin. بعد الصلوات على محمد وعلى محمد. Mahdi is not going to talk. We are punishing him because he was late tonight. So he's my son, so I have that much authority. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah for all the blessings He has given us, and the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated, and loyal in the path of our Master after the Prophet, the commander of the faithful, the prince of the believers, the protector of the Prophet and his message, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We praise Allah for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, my dear respected brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the past 2 nights, we've had the opportunity to talk about a very important subject, and that being identity. Who are we as American Muslims? So we started the discussion by speaking about the idea of the 4 spheres of identity. That sociologically, as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, we start off with that core identity being that we are followers of Ahlul Bayt, something that distinguishes us from the other members of our religion, our faith of Islam. The second sphere of identity being our belonging to that beautiful religion of Islam, and that we are to Islam and belong to it just like anybody else that calls themselves a Muslim, a follower of the faith. The third sphere of identity being that we also belong to that larger family of individuals, of groups, of faiths that follow the idea, the belief in the oneness of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, monotheism. And then finally, the fourth and final sphere being that of humanity, that regardless of what belief, what faith, what background, where you come from, you belong to that human family. That's a commonality and identity that we all share. Inspired by the teachings and the principles of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, showing us that from our belief, from our creed, we can lead lives knowing who we are, in distinguishing ourselves from others, but at the same time using our commonalities as bridges for communication, bridges for collaboration, cooperation, and living in harmony and tranquility with people that are different than us wherever we may go. Yesterday we especially focused on the idea and the importance of community, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires us in the Holy Quran that He has created us from tribes and different groups so that we may get to know one another. That diversity was created for humanity as a blessing, as an opportunity, so that we can celebrate the differences in diversity that we have and get to know one another. Tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, what we're going to be focusing on is knowing and acknowledging that we have a community, and we are a community. We have an identity. We're going to solidify a little bit more, because every night, for the past 2 nights, what we've been doing is alluding to the idea and questioning, can you have an identity that is both American and Muslim? Is it something that can coexist within one human being, one community, one society? Can you identify wholeheartedly with the citizenship that you have and the religion and faith that you have? Is this something that Islam is only meant for the East, or for particularly the Middle East? Or is this something that truly can be adopted and used, and one can live and thrive and be successful in all facets of life? Not merely be successful for the afterlife, but be successful in this life as well, with that religion of Islam, wherever they may be. And further,
questioning ourselves and saying, as a community, do we take what option? Which option do we take of the following three options, which sociologically we tend to find ourselves both as individuals and as groups, being the following. One, do we assimilate in a society that we live in? If we look at historically, the followers of Ahlul Bayt and the religion of Islam, especially in its earliest days, before its nation and empire would grow, was a minority amongst a majority of people. That not everyone in society followed the beliefs of Islam, especially when it came even with the growth of the Islamic empire. Over the years and the many decades and centuries that would come, particularly the followers of Ahlul Bayt were ones that were constantly a minority. That was, against the backdrop of history, the general trend, the general setting, the general condition of the followers of Ahlul Bayt being a minority. In being a minority, in a society that is different than you in your creed and your beliefs, what is your choice of engaging in your society? Is it one, assimilation? Where when we speak of assimilation, it's the idea that we melt into the society around us. And we may sacrifice and compromise our beliefs and values so that we can be one with everyone around us. So that when people see us, they cannot distinguish us. Even if we distinguish ourselves internally, when they see us, they can't distinguish us. Because we've assimilated, we've melted into the greater society around us. That's option one. Option two is the idea of isolation. That in order to protect our values and our principles, in order to safeguard what we've been taught in our religion and our principles, and what we have from our faith, we're going to isolate ourselves from those that are different than us. Option three is one that is a little different than both of the first two options. It's called integration. Integration being that you're not isolating yourself from society, nor are you assimilating yourself completely where you're losing your identity. Let's take a look at each one of these options and see what was inspired by Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. What did they want from us? Is it something that we know, assimilation, that when we refer to that hadith by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam yesterday, where the Imam encouraged us to go to the mosques, to go to the funerals, to attend to the ill ones in our community, where you need not to remove your hand from the people because people need one another. Is that assimilation? Or is it something else? When we look at the options that Ahlul Bayt provided for us, they essentially gave us the opportunity to engage in our societies in a way where we could protect our faith, but at the same time engage in our society. Now, let's take the example of the Holy Prophet himself. When he first started off in his mission, he was threatened and persecuted. The first 10 years that he had in Mecca were years that were plagued with persecution. As soon as anybody would identify themselves as a Muslim, they were persecuted. Many of the companions of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, were victims of torture. Some of them were taken and they were abused. Take the example of Ammar ibn Yasir. Ammar ibn Yasir was one of the first companions of the Holy Prophet, where he was taken, his life was threatened, he was beaten so severely, where they told him, if you don't say that you renunciate your faith, you renounce your faith in Islam, in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will kill you. So to the point where he could take the pain no longer, he said, I don't believe in it. He came to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, running to him, crying, his heart aching. He threw himself at the Prophet as he was weeping. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, this just happened to me. Where they beat me, they tortured me, and they told me if I didn't say that I don't believe in you and I don't believe in God, that he would kill me. The Prophet asked him, what did you do? He said, I didn't believe. He said, is that what you truly felt? What is in your heart? He said, of course not. That's not in my heart. My heart is only belief and dedication to you and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet told him, you did the right thing. That was one of the first examples in the community of Islam, where the Prophet taught people to engage in society in a way that you have to engage acknowledging your surroundings, that you're not to throw yourselves into situations of danger, that you are to be mindful of the society around you, that you are to acknowledge and see that it's not merely about lifting a banner up in the sky and saying, I'm Muslim, and I'm going to die for this faith. Dying for the faith is one thing. Living for the faith is another. And we have examples of the Prophet and his companions and the followers of Ahlul Bayt themselves, who gave their lives for their faith, who gave and died for the faith, but with certain conditions. What the Prophet ﷺ did in setting the example of Ammar ibn Yasir, what he would do with the rest of the examples of his disciples, of his ambassadors, would be what? Telling us that we need to engage in our society in a smart way, in a strategic way. In one way that we're not looking just at the short term of a stance that we have with another person to say, I'm a Muslim whether you like it or not. But to be mindful that you don't put yourself in danger, that you don't throw yourself in harm's way. Take the example that when a group of the Prophet's followers went to Abyssinia, when Ja'far al-Tayyar and a few other of the companions and individuals that were followers of the Prophet in the earliest days, they went to a part of Africa known as Abyssinia, which is part of modern-day Ethiopia. And when they went there, the Prophet instructed them that they have to take care of how they engage with people in that society. One of the particular things, and pay attention to this especially, is that he told them, do not go and force your beliefs and try to convert people. When you're going to that society, you are guests in that society. Your obligation, just because you have been guided, is not that you're going to convert people. Yesterday night, a sister asked at the bonfire outside, how can I guide people to our faith? Especially when it comes to people from different schools of thought or different religions. I reminded myself, of course, before reminding her, that we need to be examples. As Imam Sadiq alayhi salam taught us and told us, be a calling to us without your tongue. As in, just live. Be. Be as Imam Sadiq wanted you to be. Be as Imam Ali wanted you to be. Be as the Holy Prophet wanted you to be. And then people will be guided. Our obligation is what? To guide ourselves before we guide anyone else. Our obligation is to be that light that shines our own path before we dare to shine the path of others. Just be, and if people see the light, just like Ali ibn Abi Talib Amir al-Mu'mineen said, there is enough light for those who wish to see. If we make sure that we look at ourselves first and foremost, inshallah, everyone will follow. The Prophet didn't make it a point for him once he had the opportunity to go to different places. Take, for example, when he actually made the hijrah after 10 years being in Mecca to go on to Medina, he didn't make it a point to go and tell the Christians and the Jews that lived in Medina, this is our faith, this is why you should follow us, and this is why you should become a Muslim. In fact, what he did was, if you look at the Charter of Medina, most of the Charter of Medina, an agreement, a constitution, was based on the agreement amongst the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews living in Medina, as to how they would engage as a society, respecting their rights and their existence, their presence in their own being. It didn't have to be where you have to be like me, you have to believe in the same things as I do for us to engage and live with one another in a society. And that was even with the Prophet growing his community and ultimately becoming a majority in the place that he lived. That even when it came from switching the role of the Muslims from being a minority to becoming a majority, they still respected the rights of others to exist. And let's be reminded of the example of Imam Ali alayhi salam, when we mentioned the first night, when he was the Khalifa himself, at the helm of the power, at the helm of authority, in Kufa, walking in the market, humbly walking in the market, seeing an elderly man begging for help, asking people, why is he being helped? The answer being, he's just a Christian. Now I'm being so aggravated by that, so frustrated by that, that I'm not moving from here until you go to the treasury and take care of this man. How dare you use him up in his youth and then neglect him in his old age? How dare you? That this idea, my dear brothers and sisters, that when we are a part of our faith. I remember sitting with a group of young brothers a few days ago, and one of them was asking about what happens to people that do not follow our faith. What happens to individuals that are not, one, followers of Ahlul or two, believers in the religion of Islam? And that there's so many opportunities for people to learn about Islam, but they choose not to. What happens to them? I said simply that what we know from our teachings of Ahlul Bayt and the teachings of the Holy Prophet and the teachings of the Holy Quran is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges people based on their knowledge and what they know. That judgment is not for us to make. Unless we have a clear ruling from the Prophet or from the Quran of the outcome of certain person's actions or people's actions in general, we need to be mindful that we can't just start looking at people and judging them away to heaven or hell. We need to be mindful that before we look at the actions, the conduct, and the behaviors of others, we need to look at ourselves. That simply because someone is different than us doesn't mean that this person is a bad individual. Doesn't mean that this person is going to be damned in eternal hellfire. That is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to judge based on the individual's knowledge. You look at the examples of people that have never been exposed, whether it's Islam in the wording of Islam or any kind of idea of religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-merciful. Is He going to just throw people in hellfire because they didn't follow that? They weren't exposed to. Again, it goes back to each and every individual and what they're exposed to and what they know. What have they been taught? What have they saw? And it's a reminder for all of us. Before we go and we point the finger to say, well, this person is guided and this person is misguided, whether it be within our own community or outside our own community, that if we, alhamdulillah, are ones who think we are guided, then we have a greater responsibility to make sure that everything we do falls in line with what God expects of us, especially when it comes in being judgmental and condescending to other people. Sallallahu Muhammad wa alayhi. And I bring this reminder, my dear brothers and sisters, in the idea that in this holy month, a month of rediscovering ourselves, a month of reform, a month of change, that we look at our ethics, we look at our intentions, we look at our thoughts and our feelings, we look really deep inside and reflect. And I mention this, I believe, every single month, that an hour of reflection is worth 70 years of worship, or worth more than 70 years of worship, according to the narrations narrated by the Holy Prophet. Imagine that. If we take the time to reflect, what kind of outcome we will have. Now, when we go back to the idea of assimilation, isolation, and integration, we see these examples where the Prophet, wherever he instructed the believers, whether it was going to Medina, going and taking refuge for a certain period of time in Abyssinia, or any other part. Take the example of one of the companions, Hamad, who went to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and complains to Imam Sadiq that he keeps on getting chided, harassed by some of the other Muslims. That whenever he comes back to Arabia, because he lived outside of Arabia, that whenever he comes back to Arabia, he's harassed by some of the other Muslims who know him and say that you're going to be resurrected with those people that you live with. He lived in a community, in a society that was not Muslim. He lived far away from Arabia, far away from the Muslim nation. Imam Sadiq asked him, Ya Hamad, when you are away, do you remember our cause? Do you remember our cause? He said, yes, of course I do. He said, when you come back to these cities, the cities of Islam, the cities of Muslims, do you remember our cause? He said, no, I don't. He said, oh Hamad, living where you're living, you will be resurrected as a nation of your own, and light will be beaming from your hands. Take that and apply it to us, or anybody in the world who is trying to live their lives, who is trying to escape situations that would harm their health, their well-being, their religion, their faith, their practice. Them worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way they know they should worship Him. Whether it be in parts of the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. That they escape those areas to go to a place where they have the opportunity to practice and live and seek opportunity for this world and the next. I started the first night with mentioning the example of my grandfathers, God rest their souls, where they came from Lebanon in the 70s, escaping the civil war that was taking place in plaguing Lebanon. That they were shoemakers, they worked in leather work, and they came to this country, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody here, and they made an opportunity for themselves so that they can protect, take care of their 6+ children in each one of their families, and allow for us, as children and grandchildren, to practice, to live, to thrive, to know our faith, know our culture, know our heritage, but also create an opportunity and live and thrive in a society that allows us to do so. So that we have first-generation Muslims, like myself and my siblings and my cousins, that we can proudly say that we are American Muslims, proudly say that we have heritage from Lebanon, that our families come from a place with rich heritage, but at the same time we've made this place our home. Now, is this something that the Prophet inspired? Is this something that Ahlul Bayt inspired? It is definitely so. Because you found that Islam was not contained in Arabia. Though it was born there, it would flourish to all places across the world. And people would become Muslims and practice that faith, not as individuals that would be at odds with their society, but as individuals that would contribute the most to their society. And it was a point of pride. For every community you will see that truly, if you have people that are practicing their faith, they will end up being individuals that contribute the most to the society. You're not isolating themselves. Now, the idea of isolation and the idea of assimilation, let's take a quick look and see, are these, even though you're kind of seeing where we're going with this, with assimilation, to indulge oneself in society merely to be accepted by the majority is not something that Ahlul Bayt inspired. Why? Because Imam Ali alayhi salam, inspired by the Prophet, reminded us that لا تعرض بعد الهجرة. There is no going back to a state of being uncivilized, going back to a state that is without faith, without religion, without guidance. After migration, as in after you've been guided to the faith, there's no going back. So if you're going to go to a society, a community, if you're going to, let's say, move from one place where you have guidance and faith to another community where you're going to lose your faith, Islam prohibits that. That's why even jurisprudentially we have, where people say, if I go and move to this country, let's say in Europe, or I go to Australia, or I go to Africa, wherever in the world, and I know that by going to that place, I'm going to lose my faith and I'm not going to be able to practice my religion. I'm going to stray from my religion. Then your presence in that place is actually forbidden, religiously, morally. So the idea of going to a society and losing your faith and not being one who is able to hold on to those principles, that's not an option for us. So pure assimilation is not an option for us because that clear principle, لا تعرض بعد الهجرة. The second option being isolation. That can we be a community that is upholding our obligations and our responsibilities by isolating ourselves, by creating a bubble for ourselves? Take, for example, the Amish community. The Amish community, a well-respected community, that has chosen for itself to remain in its certain lifestyle, certain values, and not to engage whatsoever with the developments of the society around you, where they are doing their thing and they're not being disturbed and they don't wish to disturb anyone else. You go to parts of northern Michigan or western Michigan, you might run into and see some Amish communities where you'll be reminded, well, wow, they're still on horseback. They're not using technology the way we're using technology today. They're tight, close-knit communities. That is an example of pure isolation. Do we as Muslims encourage the idea of pure isolation? Now apply it to us. Sometimes you may find some communities that are very isolated, that do not engage with the society around them. Out of what? In principle, it's a good thing. In principle, the idea to protect one's faith and guard oneself from losing that, from losing the principle and the values, so that we're not misguided and we do not stray away. In principle, it's a good idea. However, if it's going to be in a way where you do not engage with your society anymore, it's definitely something that is not encouraged. Why? Going back to the hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says that people need one another. Do not remove your hand from the people, because if you remove your hand from the people, you will lose many hands while they only lose one hand. That, yes, maybe you're going to protect yourself. But guess what? Your role and your responsibility that is in being a part of a society, just like the Prophet was a part of his society, just like Imam Ali was an integral part of his society. When you're removing that for yourself, you're also allowing for people to take a certain judgment of you and your community that might be misguided, without having the ability, not necessarily to go out and preach, not necessarily to go out and bring people to the religion, but when you're not even allowing yourself to be exposed in a way where they see you, where you go to university, you go to college, you go and you have your professional life, you open up businesses, you engage with the community around you, so people, when they have questions about what is a Muslim, what is Islam, they don't have to actually even engage in a dialogue. They just see, oh, I know Muhammad, I know Ali, I know Abbas, I know Fatima, I know Zahra. They're great people. Where Imam Sadiq alayhi salam tells us, be an adornment to us. Do not be ashamed to us. And just be du'atan bighayri alsinatikum. Isolation doesn't allow us that opportunity. That we may think the world is not having a piece of us because, you know what, we're deciding to protect ourselves. But the world will go on. With or without us, the world will go on. So it's up to us, if we want to actually be a part of that growth of humanity, then we need to take that integral part of the society around us. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So assimilation is being one extreme, one pure example, one pure form of melting in one society, a minority within a majority. And then isolation, also being a minority, or choosing to stay away from the rest of society in order to protect one's values. Both of these don't work. Because you're sacrificing and compromising in areas that should not be sacrificed and should not be compromised. So we have the third option, integration. What does integration mean? Integration is that you and I, as brothers and sisters, can be a part of our society. We can be American Muslims. We can be a part of our society, whether it's here in the United States, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, any part of Europe, any part of the Middle East, any part of Africa, any part of Asia, anywhere in the world, as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent as a rahmah to all the nations. We are an extension of that as his followers. That anywhere in the world, you can have a Muslim that is thriving in his community. as the principle of integration teaches us that you can be one who practices his faith, but at the same time, you can be a contributing member of your society. How does that look? You can go to university, you can go to college, and at the same time, there's certain things that you're not going to do. Why? Because your faith allows you those restrictions, those restraints, those limitations, so that you can make sure that you uphold your respect and your dignity as an individual. Now, you know, for example, and this is something that we face as professionals all the time, that in order to gain business in the business world, I'll speak to you as an attorney, where we have opportunities to engage with people, for example, in bars and pubs, where I can look for opportunities to engage and network with people and grow my business, but I'm not going to go to a bar or a pub. The approach of assimilation is that we throw ourselves wherever we need to be so that we can be successful and assimilate and engage in that society. Once we find ourselves with the lines of our faith telling us, you can't go there, we stop. That's stopping us from going full assimilation. Integration is, I'm stopping at that point, but I'll tell the person, hey, I'll meet you up for coffee. That I'm not going to isolate myself and say, this is an individual who goes to a bar or a pub. I will not affiliate with him whatsoever. He's from a different faith, from a different background. He has different values and principles than I do. So I'm going to be respectful of him. I'm not going to go to the place that he goes, but I'm not going to eliminate a relationship and an opportunity with him. You see the difference? Isolation is, I'm going to eliminate all the opportunities. I'm not going to engage out of fear of being misled, being misguided, strangled. Assimilation, I'm going to jump at every single opportunity. And I'm going to throw myself so I can be successful in my society. Integration is telling us, the Prophet ﷺ taught us, engage and integrate in society, but stop yourself. This mic is having some issues. But stop yourself. At the points where your faith tells you to stop. And at the points where your faith tells you to go, for example, it's 2 o'clock or it's 1:30 some, and you're about to have a work meeting. You make it a priority, let me stop for 5 minutes so I can pray, and then schedule my meeting. Let me stop for 5 minutes so I can get my day in order by reflecting and meditating through that prayer. You see the difference? That is what Islam is for us. Islam, my dear brothers and sisters, is not something that is coming to replace your lifestyle. It's merely an organizing tool so that you can be successful in this life and the next. It organizes our schedules. It organizes our lives. It isn't one who, for example, we have this institution, this building, and Islam is coming to destroying the building and creating another building instead. No, Islam is the finishing touches. There are a lot of things that we have as humanity. For example, the sciences. We have some doctors, some people in the medical field here in the audience. You know that you don't necessarily go to the Quran to learn about the medical field. You don't necessarily go to the Quran to go and learn about engineering and architecture. You don't necessarily go to the Quran and the Hadith of Ahlul Bayt to go into business practices. These are things as humanity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided for us to go and learn and venture. But use Islam to make sure that it gives you the restrictions. It gives you the limitations that do not transgress when it comes to people's rights. Make sure that you uphold your obligations. It's that organizing tool for us to keep us in check so that not only are we thriving in this life, in this world, but we're also making sure that we're securing our investment for the year after. That we have things in order for our afterlife. Now with that, my dear brothers and sisters, I'd like to end and just say a few last words. Though I went a little bit over the time that I had planned to go. As a community, we have a lot of potential. And I want all of us, young and old, to think about this. As a community, we have tremendous potential. Like we mentioned yesterday, the hadith, which every opportunity I have. For those of you who I've had discussions with before, you probably remember this hadith. We remind ourselves with this hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. You think you're insignificant, while within you lies the greatest universe. As individuals, we have the greatest potential. But we need to hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to hold on to the rope of God. If we look, we contemplate, we reflect, we research, we read, we engage in discussions, we try to learn, we will find the answers that we need. We will make sure that if we feel weak, we will find strength. If we feel misguided, we will find light. If we're hearing noise, by going to the right places, you will get the calm and the ease that you need. But we need to strive. We need to move forward. And I remind myself before I remind any of you, again, let us not lose sight of the opportunity that we have in these nights. Whether it's a bad habit that we wish to break or replace, or it's a new habit that we wish to gain. Let's take the opportunity in these nights so that we can not just go through a sprint of 30 days, but we can actually move on to a marathon that is the 365 every year, year round. Because life, my dear brothers and sisters, is not a sprint. It's a marathon. We need to know how to pace ourselves and how to grow. Let us not lose hope in ourselves. Because if we have hope in God, we should have hope in ourselves as individuals and as a community. I thank you for listening, and I ask you for forgiveness for any shortcomings. In the last of our prayers, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa afdal salatu wa taslim ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa tayyibin
I'd like to thank Brother Jalal for very inspiring the message, especially with this word of integration. I think that's very important. I was reading some of these comments today on the Yahoo page, and it's amazing that so much ignorance and injustice exists. Lots of evil voices in our society say ban Islam, bomb Islam, go back home, destroy this religion. And it's amazing. And in such an ignorant environment, it's very important that we take this